Good morning, class, and welcome to week 9 and our weekly video discussion. Let's touch on a little bit about housekeeping issues, and then I have a little bit of content I want to go over. But first, I am coming to you from Austin, Texas, just outside of Austin, Texas, a little rural out here. It's gorgeous, which puts me about halfway to North Carolina. So my trip is about half done. I'm slowly making my way across the country and having a great time. I will be on the ground there in about a week. So again, if you have any issues, I'm always available, even if I am on the road. And if you have cause to reach out and discuss something, please do. Getting into the housekeeping issues, the discussion board posts are looking wonderful. The content you guys are creating is fantastic. It's much improved when it comes to formatting, and that is all 100% credited to you guys. The work that you put into researching and learning the formatting techniques and the writing styles is nobody's credit except for your own. So for that, I compliment you and say thank you. One thing that I do want to add to that as a caveat is don't forget that on those responses that there needs to be some original content in there, a good deal of original content. It needs to move the conversation forward. So just merely repeating what the original poster said and complimenting on them on that topic, or repeating a couple key points isn't necessarily the best style, and it's not going to get you the best grade either. So make sure you move the conversation forward using the information that the original poster created. That way it's not just a repeat. Second of all, the research paper for the semester is due this week. I hope you guys have put some effort into that already and you're not waiting too late to start that. Remember, that's exactly what it is. It's a research paper. So you need to do some research on that topic and make sure you cite the sources of the research when you use the information that you find in the body of your writing. Cite them correctly, and make sure you use a proper cover page, a proper narrative, and use APA style in your formatting. So page numbers where they need to be, the cover sheet formatted the way it needs to be, and then a separate, reference page. So it's a little bit more detailed than your discussion board posts, but I've given you the resources to use as exemplars. And if you need to, I always encourage you to go to the Purdue OWL website, the OWL Online Writing Lab, and it will give you perfect exemplars on how to use or create an APA formatted paper. Also, you can go online and there are several templates that are already created for Word that will help you so that the page numbers will be in the right place, your running head will be in the right place, your cover sheet will be formatted correctly, things like that. There's some information that needs to go onto each one of those pages as APA dictates, and I expect you guys to follow those formats. The last thing that I want to bring up as far as housekeeping is the final exam. That is next week. The final exam is going to be cumulative for the entire semester. However, it is not going to be multiple choice. Your final exam will consist of 4 questions, 4 essay questions taken from topics throughout the semester. Since there are only 4 questions, I know you're going to know that you need to be as thorough as possible, but I want to remind you, each question is an essay question. It's not a sentence question or a paragraph question. So keep that in mind when you're writing. One of the things that I wrote in the instructions is I recommend at least 3 paragraphs, and I can't stress at least enough. Each question has to be thoroughly answered in an essay format, using sources. Cite your sources correctly when you bring them up. Cite the textbook or even outside sources. You have plenty of time to create your content before you run out of time. So make sure you are thorough and you take as much space and as much content writing as necessary to thoroughly answer the question. That's the only way you'll get full credit. And with only 4 questions, you want to get full credit or as many points as possible on each one of those questions. If you have any issues with that, again, I always encourage you guys to reach out. Let's touch a little bit on this week's content. Most specifically, I wanted to touch on weapons of mass destruction. One of the primary categories of weapons of mass destruction are NBC weapons, just like the network, the TV network, NBC. That stands for nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons. When it comes to nuclear weapons, atomic style weapons, it usually takes a large amount of technology and a governmental assistance or backing to develop and create these weapons outside of something along the lines of a dirty bomb that would use atomic particles and atomic sources that would just merely blow up like an explosion and spread radiation. But a true nuclear weapon takes a lot of money, a lot of backing, and a lot of research. More common to today's and the future, as we look to the future, the terrorist strategies are chemical and biological weapons. You see, those are going to be and are a true threat. We've already had biological and chemical weapon attacks and uses in the past, and there's no reason to assume that they won't continue in the future. One of the things that was said about biological and chemical weapons is that they are the poor man's nuclear weapon. If it takes an entire country or entire government backing with finances to develop a nuclear weapon, then anybody can acquire and use a biological or chemical weapon. One of the earlier instances of these types of weapons being used was not necessarily in a terrorist setting, but it was in a World War I, when both sides were entrenched in trench warfare, where everybody's hiding in the trenches and popping up and shooting. One of the strategies to alleviate that stalemate was to use mustard gas on the enemy. That way the gas could reach the enemy a lot more easily than weapons that were using traditional bullets or explosives. So you see that in a war setting. But even after that, you look at after post 9/11, there were several anthrax attacks on U.S. officials, and by attacks I mean that the anthrax was sent in an envelope or in a package. You see a powder, and that can become deadly and eventually kill somebody. That is a biological attack, because anthrax is a biological weapon. Also, you see when it comes to chemical attacks, one of the more infamous attacks occurred in Tokyo, the Tokyo subway system, where sarin gas was introduced into the subway vents and eventually into meeting people during rush hour. So sarin gas, obviously a very deadly attack, and was critical in getting that terrorist organization's point across, and very significant in the destructive power when it comes to attacking a subway system with very limited air and oxygen supplies. So you see, when it comes to biological, when it comes to chemical weapons, those types of attacks are not very sophisticated. They are easily accomplished. The ingredients for biological and chemical weapons are not necessarily hard to acquire. And if you look at the homeland here, and you look at the United States, there was a 1991 audit that showed that at least 9 chemical sites across the country were vulnerable to an air attack. And if somebody were to attack via the air, and on top of that, there were actually 4 additional sites that were vulnerable to ground attack. So if somebody was able to attack a chemical site here in the United States, either A, they could overcome security and acquire the chemicals that are inside that plant, or a large enough scale attack could actually introduce the chemicals in that plant into the air and act as a de facto bomb and a biological attack using the chemicals that were already there. Excuse me, I said biological, I meant chemical attack, using the chemicals that were already there on the plant. So a couple different strategies could be implemented merely by exploiting the vulnerabilities of our in-house, our domestic chemical plants. So that's just a couple of points I wanted to go over. I encourage you to read chapter 15 thoroughly. There's only one test this week, so that should make you a little bit happier when it comes to your workload for the week. Only one exam this week. Make sure you get the research paper done on time. I don't want those are just free points that you're throwing away if you submit your paper late. So I'd hate to see that happen. Any other issues that arise, please reach out. I'm available whenever you need me, and I look forward to reading your papers and your exams.